Hello, everybody. Welcome inside the Astro Studio, where you get a look behind the scene of the work of the astrologers we love to learn from. I'm your host, Sarah El-Harar, Astro Auntie, and today I'm talking to Stormie Grace. I'm so happy to have Stormie over and to do this with her. Stormie is, of course, I hope some of you know her and probably do because she's a very popular YouTube teacher of astrology. Her YouTube channel is amazing at Stormie Grace on YouTube. She has almost 90,000 subscribers or something. It's really fantastic. And she teaches basic astrology with some of the finest astrologers around the world. She's also a doctor. So really nobody calls you doctor, but I feel like I should call you Dr. Stormie because it's cool. And you're a doctor of business and you help astrologers with business a lot. And a lot of the things that you share with the community is about business, which is amazing. And I'm so grateful to have learned some of that from you. You're also a board member of OPA, a member of AFAN, ESAR, NCGR, a contributor to many, many things, Astrology Hub and different magazines, a member, faculty member for the Portland School of Astrology. So you do a lot of things and you're many, many places. And you're very much like, for me, as far as I'm concerned, like a pillar of the astrology community worldwide. I saw you present at ESAR, at NORWAC. And so you're doing so much and your contribution to the community is so great. That's why I'm so happy to have you here. So thank you so much, Stormie, for accepting my invitation.
Yeah, thank you for extending the invitation. It's always exciting to come to talk about this. This is what I'm building a life doing. So I am always thrilled to talk about it. And so
Yeah.
thank you for asking.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I know you're a Taurus, but do you mind sharing your big three? I feel like it's mandatory, like first introductions in our
Yeah, we
world.
have to start with the soul gazing. It's like, let me just see into your soul first. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a ninth house Taurus sun. I am a Virgo rising, and I have a Libra moon that is clicked inside of a stellium of Mars, Moon, Saturn, and Pluto.
Sexy little Libra bundle over there. Yeah, yeah.
Bundle. There's a lot of Venus going on in this chart, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, sweet. So first I want to hear a little bit about your story, like who you were before you knew astrology. Like there was a moment where you dipped your toes a little bit deeper, but who were you before then? Like
Yeah,
young Stormy, tell me who she was.
young Stormy. It's funny to be asked that question right now at this point in my life where I've been doing this life review, but I have found out that young Stormy was an astrologer. I just didn't know what that was. And I say that because from the time that I was very little, and I have my parent and my family confirmation of these things as well, but I've always been able to see spirit and to move in that realm that is a realm that's between the realms, but also as equally placed. And that was never different for me. I thought that the world worked like that. And so when I was between 6, 7, right there at my first Saturn Square, my mom actually took me to a metaphysical fair
Mm,
because she realized that I was like not seeing the world the way that maybe my brothers were. And my mom herself is a Taurus as well. We're a day apart, many years apart, but she could take plants and they would be like on the brink of death and she'd just bring them back to life. She's a plant medicine lady.
agree.
But so yeah, absolutely. So she took me to a metaphysical fair and it was cool because I was like, yeah, I dig these people, and there were the medicines and the apothecary things and the numerology and the tarot. And then there was a woman and she was an astrologer and I was watching her do a chart and I felt like I was watching her do something that I had done 100 times. It didn't seem foreign to me at all. So I think that as far as this lifetime goes, or however we like to frame that, I have been an astrologer since I was really little. I just didn't know what that word was, but I never worried about it either. I never worried that I wouldn't have astrology or I wouldn't have connection to spirit. Those were not my like concerns in the world. And it's not because I'm so special, it's just
It
what
was
it
a
was.
given.
Yeah. And I mean, as I got older in my life and I had times and spaces to find the disconnection from spirit, let me know how long I had really been connected in to it. And then what it's like to be in and out of that connection and let it guide. So young Stormy talked a lot. I have Mercury and Gemini at the midheaven. Girl, I have been talking forever, forever. And every single one of my report cards, all the way up through college, was like excessive talking, excessive talking, excessive talking. And so between the Venus and all the Mercury in my chart, that's what it is. I was cute and I talked a lot. And that's really, if I boil it down, it's funny that that's what I found out as an adult when somebody was like, what do you really want to do with your life? And I'm like, I just want to be pretty and say things. And that is the most
Right.
honest thing that I can tell you about what I really, when I get gut level, not trying to impress other people, honest, I just want to carry a beautiful vibration. And when I show up, I want people to think, oh my God, good things are about to happen. And I want to say things. I want to talk about things that they don't have to be my ideas, but I want to share news and information and teach people. And it took me, till about 38 to really get honest about that. But here it is.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, and it sounds like really basic needs, Taurian, kind of like what really do you want? Like boil it down, boil it down. And for sure, Taurus is going to be like, and can it be cute too? Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can. It can.
Yes,
Yeah,
they can. And my other favorite, question people will ask me about things, and I'm like, well, what's the value of that to you? Or what's the value of that? I'm a good person to ask about the value because I want to know, do you value that? The decisions I'm making in my life, I'm weighing them against what do I really value? And in business, I'm going to ask you the question of the value you bring and how much you charge for it. And I think that that is a gift of growing into my Taurus feet is to be able to comfortably bring people to things like value and money and finances in a way that's sacred instead of scary, you know? And I really love that about this era of my life. Young
right,
Stormy was broke. She was
right.
broke. She was spending all kinds of weird money. So, I've had a lot of growth around that.
Oh, that's really beautiful that you're saying that. And yeah, it's interesting. So in a way, it's like it also feels really Virgo when you were saying also like this blending of like the spirit and the earth and how to make the sacred, the mundane sacred, I feel is like really Virgo's work to make like every little task kind of like holy. And so there's definitely a thing with money too, like it feels dirty to some people or scary, and it's like the simplifying, the purifying. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I,
And so
I love
what's
it.
your like initiation moment into astrology? Like what do you consider like the moment where you were like, oh, this is astrology is happening to me? Like, oh, yeah. Like when did you dip further?
Yeah, well, I think my first most significant moment of conscious memory was definitely at that metaphysical table because I was aware. I was,
Yeah,
I was just aware. I was like, oh, I see what's happening here. Like I know what's going on. And I knew I wasn't a tarot person. I knew I wasn't many of the other things that we celebrate in that space. I was like, I'm here.
this.
So from there, that little first conscious awareness really did guide the rest of my life because then I felt like I could follow astrology and I could, go down that route pretty easily. And I loved reading the things in the back of the teen magazines, about what is Taurus, what's happening for Taurus this month. I loved reading that stuff. But as it got deeper, the next deep place for me was at my Saturn return. And I will tell you, it was the most tearful, deep dive ever. Because remember, like, I was not ever afraid to be without astrology because I don't feel like in a very long time I've ever been without astrology. So I wasn't like, I need to study and get a death grip on this thing and just really read and go down the rabbit hole. I was like, it's here. When it's time to recall it, it will present itself. However, I didn't really realize how true that was. And I was working in radio and loved it, absolutely loved it. I fell in love with working in radio. I say it's probably my first like real love, honestly. And I learned every avenue of that business. And I was my Saturn return was coming up, and I knew, I was like, okay, I'm going to the next chapter of my life. And it was a very knowing of the transit, knowing the astrology, knowing what was supposed to unfold, but having to step in and experience it and walk through it in my body and in my heart and let my vision change. And what that looked like was, honest to goodness, I spent the 6 months before my Saturn return being a woman who loved radio, wore colors all the time, got dressed up, went into this wonderful place where we shared news. I spent 6 months before that wearing black every day, being very, very sad going into work and feeling like I was being torn away from my family, the work family. And a lot of things were changing in the corporate structure at that time. And I walked through the door at my Saturn return, and it was literally like, here's the parking lot, here's the entry into the radio station. And I walked through the door and got hit with the reality that I was about to really be an astrologer. I was going to open my practice, and I was also going to open my practice on YouTube. And I was like, at that time, I had watched like one YouTube video, honestly, watched it all the way through.
So when
And
you're
I was,
doing this, wait, hold up. Okay, wait, slow down. I'm here with you. You're doing this because you're opening your door, the door to work, and vroom, it just
yeah.
like a like that's so Raven vision type of thing. You had, do you know that that's so Raven?
Yeah, I remember it vaguely, but
Like
what
that,
I think of it as,
like
I
tell me.
think about it like we talk about, I talk a lot about the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, and they go through these really special archways that take them to the next place, right? And that's what it was like for me. Like I opened the door to this old thing that just wasn't going to be anymore. And it was my job to like step in and author the next chapter of the story. And it didn't mean I knew what it was going to look like. Even studying and following my own astrology, like I had some ideas, but mostly what was really significant about coming to astrology that way for me was the being in the experience of my astrology, because it was painful and tearful. And that's why I always say that Stormie Grace is a business that was built on faith. Because the only thing I really knew then is that I was like, if this is the door that I walked through and it's right, the universe has got my back. And there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to mess this thing up. So it really started building with a lot of blind faith. And I am grateful that astrologically I have Uranus at the IC. So it has been helpful for me, because the way that I build most things is I really do, sorry, audience, but I say F it and I jump and I watch where the universe catches me. And usually it's on some awesome ride. And I build something that is old, but I present it in a new way. And that is what happened.
I love this so much on so many levels. Like, what a wow. So it's almost like it was a moment of clarity, like a split second of knowing, and a knowing that's like so overwhelming that you almost like you knew that the next step. So then you quit your job that you loved for so many years.
Oh, girl, I wish it was that. I am still a Taurus. I
Ah,
loved that.
that's what I thought. I'm like, wait, hold up. That feels sudden. A Uranus, sure, sure. I hear you. I have Uranus midheaven, so I could hear that. But ha are you even a Taurus?
Right? Yeah, yeah. No, let me tell you what. So it came through, and I walked through the door and I went into work and I just stood in the lobby and I was like, what is that? And that is, I've been through there a couple times in my life, and it's just, into the new space. And what happened was I started to very slowly build and learn to do this thing. And I did it like inch by inch by inch, especially on YouTube, because I was not tech familiar. I didn't have any of that going. And it took me a year to leave that job. And it was not because, astrologically speaking, practicality speaking, it was not because I needed to stay at that job. It's because I was afraid. I was afraid. I had become an adult at that Saturn return for the first time in my life. But that didn't mean I didn't have my old thinking of how things had to be, So I had to spend that time in that year. And it's funny because I spent the year wearing black. I wore black every day, which is just like, if you'd have seen me before, I was like, whose paint box is that, over there? And so it was a very Saturnian experience, but it took me a year out of fear. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it. The self-doubt of Saturn pushing in, pushing in, pushing in, but also mixed with, yeah, I am. So it was like this interesting walk to experience that. And it took me a year, and it was a painful year because I wouldn't let go. It was just painful because I wouldn't or couldn't let go. I don't know the answer to that. But that's where I've also gotten to let that inform my life and my practice, where I'm watching someone and I'm like, let's talk through how to let it go because the pain will stop.
Yeah. I think also it's painful to let go,
Mhm.
like the process, I mean, it's Saturn return. It's not like there's something about, yeah, some of it growth pains. Some of it is not going to be comfortable. Some of it is going to ask you to do things differently. And for sure, for Tauruses, yeah, trying new things can be like really scary and stuff. So it can get like extra rocky, but it's still, I find also there's something really beautiful about like the natural time that it does take to get over a hump. Like you don't just like, oh, that's, I mean, and some people do. Some people are Aries and they can, they can just react on the drop of a hat. But from some other people, it like the natural process of letting go has that like tension. And it's beautiful to acknowledge it. But I love the image of you like all of a sudden dressing in black.
It was,
Where is Saturn for
it
you?
was wild second house in my Libra stellium. And it was just a really wild experience, I mean, it was a wild experience for everyone around me. And in that year, like I had gone from really being a light in the radio station. And it's not that I was a bad person, but I was definitely a heavier, more complicated energy even to be at. And so that was also a piece of the reflection, is that what is happening when these planets get involved in us that emanates and spills out onto other people in our environment as well. Like, because we're not having a Saturn return in a bubble. Everything that is shifting in that cellular rebuilding is also going to spill out to our homes, our families, our communities, and these things. So, in that way, I got a lot of insight. But I can tell you what I also learned in there is that as a Taurus, it's okay to let go more quickly because the universe will catch. Because what happened is finally, I just had to pull an F it and I had to go, okay, this is it. I'm going to let go. And I went in and I quit. And let me tell you, Stormie Grace was like this big. Okay. It was not this live, thriving thing that it is today. And I said, okay, this is it. I'm leaving. And I let it go. And I walked out, and the amount of money that I actually got from severing from that, like in my last paychecks, bonuses, all of these things, was enough to cover me for several months. And it came like that. It came just like that. I let go. And of course, immediately the weight off my chest changed. So I just want to throw this in there too, because in case someone else has this experience, so I let go and yay, nirvana. No, I let go. It was great. The money was in place. I kept building Stormie Grace. And it was a walk of faith for me. It was an everyday having to sit with the universe and go, I'm terrified, but show me. I'm terrified, but show me. Right. And make those baby steps. And somewhere in there, I got too afraid again. And I picked up a job at a different radio station, which was a terrible fit. And The universe is funny. I stepped into this woman's job who loved her job. She left for maternity leave, right? And they needed somebody to do the job, full-time job, full benefits, all the things. And I was like, okay. And they hired me to do it. And I hated it because what I was always thinking of was, I want to be working on my own thing, right? But I could do the job and I had a big, beautiful office and da, 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 da. And she came back in as the secretary part-time and she hated it. She wanted to do her job. And she and I became friends. And this is where the universe, I think, is really, really awesome. Because the day and the time, the moment came where she came in and we were sitting together. And I just looked at her and I said, do you want your job back? And she's like, what? I was like, do you want your job back? I'll take your job. You take mine. Because I knew if I worked part-time, I'd have the whole rest of the time to build Stormie Grace.
I
Right. And it was just another F it moment for me.
I love,
And isn't it crazy?
love. It's such a great like trading seats. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so we walked into the HR lady's office and she's looking at me like I'm
Just
insane. And I said, I'd like to take that job. And she'd like to have her job back. And she's like, you realize you're not going to have benefits. It's not full time, all of these things. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like just big smile, ready to go. Right. And she's like, okay, starting next week, you guys can switch back. And I was so, again, relieved. Now, here's where it gets really good, and I think that this is where Stormie Grace officially got its feet. But I stayed in that job for 2 weeks, and it was so great. I worked up front, and I was being beautiful and saying things. And I talked to every delivery person who came in. I welcomed people at other people's businesses. I was like, "Hello," like it was ideal for me.
you
And then
glowed.
oh, I did. And people would come in and bring snacks because they're like, you're so nice, which I'm a tourist. I was like, God, I love that. If I could get these people to bring some jewelry, this would really be the jam, right? And
It's
so
so Stormy, I swear. I swear that delivery guy for sure one day was gonna bring a rock, you know.
it was on the way. And so what happened is I was in that job for just a few weeks, and then my big boss and the HR lady came to me and they're like, we need to talk to you. And at this point, I was like, yeah, I didn't do anything weird. So it's not that. And they were so sorrowful. They were like, our company is getting rid of all kinds of jobs, positions, and yours is one of them. And they were so worried because I had just given up full time. I had just given up benefits, and now I was going to fully be out of a job. So I was like, okay. And I cannot tell you, but in that moment, I was like, I don't know. The universe does not want me to keep taking another job. And it keeps trying to make it very clear. So they gave me a severance package that covered me for 6 months to the dollar amount that my bills were. And I walked out of there. And that is when Stormy Grace started.
Wow, that is really epic. So yeah, when you say built on faith, like you're not even joking. This is not
No,
like you're not even saying that lightly at all.
I'm not. No, I'm not. And,
Yeah.
sitting every Sunday at the pancake place with my spiritual teacher and her being like, you gotta walk, just walk. This is how we build faith. You build faith not thinking about it. You build faith by building trust, by taking actions. And it is what it is today.
And so at that point to launch like your own astrology channel, like did you who like how did you have like the confidence, the astrology like confidence to just like go ahead, or did you study with books before? Like how did you know to what to do on video? Because you're like a really great astrologer too. Like don't
Yeah.
play, you know? Like no. So how, like, were you just like reading the whole time, this whole time, going to classes? Like, who was teaching you?
Yeah, so I picked up books by Stephen Forrest is where I started. I started in that lineage. So that's my lineage. That's the primary lineage is evolutionary through the Stephen Forrest lens. And then down the road, I'll tell you about it, but I got into the till line. And so what was happening is yeah, I was going through and I was reading the books. I was doing that and I wasn't doing it like, I got to really get this in here. I was reading because I was like, Stephen, for me, felt like sitting with an old teacher that I had spent lifetime sitting with, and I was like just able to sink it in. And that's how it worked with me. I have a Capricorn South Node, so it didn't surprise me very much that I had found a teacher this time that I could resonate with who happened to be a Capricorn, right? I was not at all surprised about that. But then when it came to actually turning on the camera and doing that, first I didn't turn on the camera. I started my YouTube channel like a radio broadcaster because I knew how to do that, right? So I started first with what did I do first? Oh, I did sun sign compatibility videos, which is funny because I really wouldn't do those today, but I needed to start, right? I needed to pull a whole bunch of efforts and just start recording. So I put up a little picture and I didn't know how to edit anything very well. And then I just did the audio track under it and I started uploading and I just started with one sign and I kept going. And so it's so funny. Those are still out there. And then I got a little braver, and people in the comment section were like, this is YouTube. We should be able to see you because the faceless videos were not really hot like they are today. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to turn on this camera. And so I started doing how to tell if a certain sign likes you videos. And I would sit in the weirdest places. There's one, it's like my most viewed video, and I'm in my bathroom with the shower curtain as the background. And people still love that video today. It is still being viewed and well received, right? And one, I'm like against like the laundry room wall. It's like, but anyway, I turned the camera on and I just started. And after getting started is where I was able to apply a bit more depth. And it wasn't in the beginning this well thought out business. I just turned on the camera and started.
Yeah, that's a bit of a daredevil there too. Like the faith in yourself also to say, I want to do it. This is good for me. And to know that it's good for you. You know, I think like people, like I know for me, and a lot of people that I speak to, like there's a certain like need to feel like you are prepared or like you know enough to put yourself in this, in the space or to be the whatever. You were just doing videos that were fun on in your bathroom. And that's really cool in the way that it's like, oh, okay, I'm doing it because it's fun and I want to do it. You know, it takes a little bit of courage, a little bit of yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I tell people all of the time, you gotta have to, even if you're confident, because I was confident to come out. I had stood on stages with celebrity performers and introduced them and went back and forth in full of arenas full of people. So the courage to stand in front of people and present was already there, but the courage to come online is different. So I tell people, you're gonna have to get a really big F-it bucket and you know, just say F it and try something sometime, right? Like I get the results on the other side of my action, not necessarily what my thinking is telling me, because my thinking can be really skewed. And then I take an action and I get to see the outcome of it. And I'm like, that wasn't so bad. And a decade later, I've got 3 thriving businesses because of that. So you're going to get a really big effort bucket, whether it's turning on your camera or trying something else. Because I think sometimes we just doubt how much we're capable of, you know?
Yeah, 100%. It's all that, I think. Most of it is that, is self-doubt and doubting of how much we're capable and then getting surprised that, oh, I could do it. And it takes these moments to figure out that you can. And so tell me something. So while you were doing that, were you doing also readings at the same time? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
I started to pick up in doing readings, and actually, it was really funny because I learned a lot in that first year, too. First of all, I learned to really deliver consistent readings, right? And I had to learn what my style was because I was coming through the forest lens, so I knew how he entered the chart and worked with it, and it made sense. And there's a process through the evolutionary lens, and it made sense But as I kept going on and I kept reading charts, I really started to find my feet in it. What is my style of reading? Where do I enter? And then how do I bring it all together? So I did start doing that. And I made the mistake of thinking, well, nobody really watches my channel. I'm like, got maybe 2,000 subscribers at the time. And so I put a link in the description box and I was like, click down below and come do a free reading with me. And I thought nobody was watching. And in that year, I did over 200 free readings. Because if they booked, this is like some sick integrity part of me, but if they booked and they got into the calendar before I removed the link, I did it. I did it. I gave those readings. But what it taught me was so much. And what it also helped me do that I couldn't have seen is it created a client base. People were like, loved that. I'll be back. Right. So, yeah, it definitely started out. And then I think the first time I charged for readings, I did a 15-15. So it was $15 for a 15-minute reading, and those sold out. And I did a lot of 15-minute readings, and then it took time to build. And in the background, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm watching how other astrologers are working. I'm starting to gently network, so all of those things were happening as this thing was growing.
All of that span of that moment of you having like really the thing happening and boom, 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 like it all fell together like in a couple of years.
It did. And I want to it did, period. It did. But there was action. There was
Yeah.
faithful action behind it because it was all I had. Because I want to click you to the other side of the veil, which was I was coming into this with two small children, right? I had full bills. I had all of the life happening, all of the life, right? Not to mention, I have a pretty sizable family, and my family they're like judges, lawyers, police officers. Okay. So, and they're also practical. They're like, what are
Security
you
job.
going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, what are you going to do? You have two small children. Like, we love that you would like to hug it out with the universe, but what are you going to do? And so, one of the things that I learned is that when I would tell them about what I was doing or what I was building, they would be really afraid or they would pick it, right? When they picked it apart for practical reasons, I could hear that. I could get on board. But when I would tell them what I was doing, I met their fear. I realized two things. One, I kept sharing with them and they couldn't see the vision of what I was doing and how I was going to do it. Today, in the digital revolution that we're all in, they're like, oh my God, you were so smart. You were so ahead of your time. You built, right? But then they couldn't. I had to, and I encourage other entrepreneurs, I had to find other people who were building like I was building. I had to find people on YouTube and start learning and talking with them about building on YouTube, right? Because if not, what I would do is take on all of their fear, get more afraid and doubtful, and then it was too scary to make content sometimes. And I'm like, I can't do that. I have to be with the people. So if that's something that you're experiencing, if you're in transition, find the people who are in the vicinity already of what you want to do. The other thing that my spiritual teacher helped me see, she's like, stop telling them about what you're doing because you're taking hostages. You're trying to make them, I was trying to make them get on board with this vision that they couldn't. They were terrified. They'd never done anything like that. And then when they didn't like it, there would be this tension in the house. And she's like, stop taking hostages. And that was really eye-opening to me because there are other people who came along this journey with me. It wasn't just me and the universe opening up to the astrological goodness. You know, they walked through that Saturn time with me as well. And so,
Mm.
how to not take hostages.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So, yeah, to be aware of like the impact that people have on us, or close people have on us, and we have on them, and really choosing who you're sharing that process with and who can help you through the process. So building community, and does that include for you like the community of teachers, because you're so much a part of the community of the teachers of astrology, like they're your friends, they're your peers, you see each other many times a year on the circuit. Um, you know, but so for you, did that include that? Like when did you actually finally meet Steven in your life? Like, because I know at some point you met him and you must have been like, Steven Forrest. Like
Oh
we
my God, I
did the first time when we saw him.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did I meet him? I met him after COVID because when COVID happened, Stormie Grace had been established for a little bit, but I had decided that I wanted to do the eat and greets, which were, since we were all locked down in our house and I like food and snacks, and then I like talking, I decided to bring astrologers to the channel and we would bring a snack and we would eat and greet. And that's what we did. And he was the first person to give me an interview, and I hadn't met him yet. And I messaged him and I told him who I was and I asked him if he'd do it. And within 6 minutes, he had responded and said, yes, absolutely.
That's the
And
best
that,
feeling. It
oh
really.
my God, it was so cool. And I just have to say this, it was like, it was like the week before that, Rick Levine had followed me on Instagram, and I was like, oh my God. I was like running around the house showing my husband. He's like, well, you're basically famous. I'm like, I know, right? I was so excited. And then Steven says yes. And I was like, okay, this is the next chapter to let it unfold. And that's when I met him and I sat with him and we just went back and forth and it was lovely. And then after that, at the first NORWAC, that was after that, I got to meet him. And it was, for me, I can't put words in his mouth, but for me, it was just like meeting a teacher that I had had forever,
Hmm.
forever. It wasn't, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think something special about Stephen is that he's been impactful for so many of us. And he's very archetypal in his way of teaching. Like he's Stephen Forrest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was gonna put an F between the first name and the last name, because he's that big, but there's something about him that is part for me of like the essence of astrology. Undeniably, now contemporary astrologers have been influenced by him in a way. So he is our teacher, very much so, because I feel some kind of like the same feeling when I hear his voice, like yeah, Stephen Forrest, man, something special about his
Yeah.
teaching for sure. And okay, so Stephen is like your first, the books, the in big influence, and then you mentioned Noel Till, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That was like, I didn't even know who Noel Till was. I had no idea. And it too was during COVID. And I was just living my best life, growing when I was growing. And I heard this booming voice. And my whole response was like, okay, calm down. I'm coming. And that was my introduction to Noel Till. And then I ran right into Kathy Rose. And I mean, within hours, I'm introduced to Till's work. And I didn't know this man. I didn't know anything about him. And I'm asking Kathy questions and I'm talking to Matthew, we met, and then Basil Farrington gets involved. And it's this whole thing that there's that clan starts to show up on my radar. And it was Kathy who was like, oh yeah, well, Noel was this huge dude with this big opera voice. And I just stopped. And I said, Kathy, that's why I'm here. And I told her what happened. She's like, that sounds exactly like him. And for me, I was like, okay, cool. He called, said I'm supposed to be here. I have pulled into the parking spot. Where's the material? Right. And so through the Till Master series, I started to go through that because he's a humanistic astrologer and his background is also from psychological space. And what I loved about him is that he just took so much of the nonsense off the table. He's like, we don't need all of these extras. How do you help people live the complexity of being alive today, right now? And what can you see? pick up a chart, and in 20 minutes, you should be able to deliver a full reading, having looked at that chart one time for 20 minutes. Get on with it. And I love that. So the two of them over time came together. And that's why I say my practice is more about like, where did you come from? What is it? What is the soul story? And what are you going to do with it now? And that has become how my practice has shaped.
Mm. And so now you're reading. So what do you do with clients? Like what's your most of your work with clients now? One-on-one readings.
So it's a blend of those two things, but primarily where I've found my own feet between my two teachers and the two families is that I really work a lot in the lunar phases, progressed and natal. And that is to, first of all, bring people grace. Like I like to teach people to have grace with themselves. Like some things are just happening because it's a part of who you are. And what would happen if you really just got to say, this is actually just how I'm made this time, right? Like how much pressure would come off if that is something you were allowed to do. But then also in the progressed lunar phases, looking at, no, you can have the best transits in the world, but if you're in a winter season of your life, which we all will go through if you stay alive, and you're trying to live it with your summer body outfit, we're going to see problems. So instead, how do you align with that? Second of all, because progressed lunar phases are a long period, it's 3.5 years. What are you doing in there? Right? Like getting to the basis of that, that's where I start and do a lot of my work at. And then we come in through the nodes and look at that soul story. What's the point? Why are you here? What's the mission? What did you do? You need to undo. We need to find the integration. And then we move more into the personal planets. What are you going to do with it? How are we going to use that? How are we going to shape this? What choices are available to you? And that's how it works forward. And it works the same with businesses. I use the exact same method with businesses as I do with people. And every here and there, the mundane astrologers will call me, and I still use the same method on looking at a mundane event as well.
And so lunar phases mostly is like you're in. This is what you're looking at. This is how you know what's going on. It's like your bread and this is what talks to you the most. And progressed lunar phases, so are you saying like the progressed moon through the signs in the house, or the progressed moon to itself, or the progressed sun? Like what's your how do you calculate the progressed lunar?
Mhm. So just within the progress chart itself, so that sun to moon shape of light, I really want to look at what is the shape of light and how long are you under that particular shadow or light that is available there. Now, there are many, many other techniques that people can do. You can do that progress moon, progress sun to the natal, or feel, listen, this is a whole rabbit hole out here,
Of course. But I love
right?
to know like what rabbit hole like kind of hooked you because we all have one. The
Yeah.
astrologer has like this particular thing. Like Celeste
Mhm.
was telling me when I interviewed her that for her it's eclipse degrees. Final answer. She has the degrees of the eclipses. That's what she's gonna look at. For her, that's her thing, For me, I do also cycles because I'm a till girl also. Like I love a division of a circle. So, but for different planets, so it's gonna be like different little cycles. But so for you, I love that the progressed lunar phases, which I learned from Stephen, actually. I took classes from him on how to do that, and it's really accurate. And it speaks also about an energetic level that's kind of like the background noise of everything else that's going on. So I love what you're saying. Don't even like if you have transits, but this is going on,
Yeah.
if you're not
Yeah.
addressing the bottom line.
Yeah, because there's so much before we crack open the transits and the everything else and really get into that, looking at the season that your life is in and what the work is in there. That's enough because that requires human development, right? It requires, if you're in deep winter, we know you're going to be experiencing the loss. We know that you're going to run out of energy. And so you have to be very selective with what you're taking on. And winter doesn't mean not productive, but you're going to need a little bit more help and a little bit more focus in here, as opposed to, you're in that first quarter time. What I'm going to tell you is, first of all, like, stay hydrated, okay? Because you're going to be moving a lot, and let go of these people, places, and things, because the universe is going to come weed your garden from the things that you don't need. And those things are going to be falling out so fast, your eyelash is going to get ripped off. So you need to just be ready. And the way that you would handle the exact same transit in these two different seasons is going to be massively different. That alone, understanding that, that could change the course of people's lives. And I know that because that's what I use in my practice.
In 1 hour. And you give you 1 hour and that's it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So I do most of your clients that they come through YouTube, do they see your videos and then they come to you, or like is it like referrals, or where do your clients come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of my clients, yeah, definitely come from YouTube, podcasts, stuff like that, because I have a podcast as well, or I go on other people's podcasts, things like that. But I have built YouTube now today. When Stormie Grace was having like a official reshaping, I built YouTube, the podcast, and anything else that is out there as simply a resource to support my business. There's simply resources to help everything coming into my business where it can actually help clients. So when somebody does see something on YouTube or on a summit or something like that, essentially they're going to flow into where I can provide my solution for them and be valuable, or not, or they just like that particular talk and that's it. And that's fine too. But all of the external things are just resources to bring people in. And it's actually a really beautiful use of my chart, because my Mercury that's in Gemini at that midheaven point is in an exact quincunx to my Jupiter in Scorpio in my third house. And I tried forever to be like on the internet being all deep, right? I was like, I'm going to take them there, right? Jupiter and Scorpio. And it didn't work. I'm like, not like that. You have to come and sit with me. And then we can peel through what this is. And I can serve as a brilliant counselor to help people. But out in public, I get to just be Mercury and Gemini and be like everywhere. And it works. And so I let people meet me in the busyness and in the out there and in the everywhere. And then the ones that want to work, we come in more closely. And that helped me work that quincunx out instead of fighting with it.
I love that. So wait, you have Mercury opposite Uranus.
Yeah.
Cool. So I have the same but opposition but switched up. My Mercury is at IC and Uranus is at MC. That's funny. Yeah. I love what you're saying about like who you are in public and how you get, it's almost like the flower, very Venusian image, like the flower that attracts the bee by the colors and everything. And then it's like when the bee lands, that's where you get the nectar. That's where the real juice is. But the bee will get attracted by the beauty of the flower. Maybe. I don't know what bees think, but you know, for you, there's something like that. Like your channel is approachable and it's friendly, it's user friendly. I feel there's like a thing, like there's other astrologers that present very academic and more maybe impenetrable. Like this is for the whatever, and you're like really warm and welcoming, and it feels like accessible intelligence for everybody. Like you're not like it's still really deep what you're saying, but it's said in a way that feels welcoming and inviting. And
You. I'd
yeah.
like that to stay true, because my midheaven is actually 29 degrees of Taurus. So, and it's a wise placement. And so I do realize the value of Venus, not in Venus in its shallow form, but Venus in I want to be warm and valuable and attractive and steady, right? I don't want
Real.
to reinvent the wheel here. I really don't. That's why if you have a Taurus midheaven, find something that's like 1,000 years old and just make it pretty, and you can be successful with that. Like you
Yeah.
don't need to go out and
It's
like
your
reinvent anything.
value. It's a proven value. This is solid. This works. This is real. Real. You're making, yeah. It's very, very beautiful. Yeah. And so another part of your work that is fascinating for me is how you teach astrologers and business astrology. So first of all, okay, wait, let's say it again, because you're a doctor. in business. So when did you do that though? In all of this? Like where she's like, okay, yeah, don't forget, like I have all of these kids and these jobs and this thing, and then this business, but then she's like, and also, so what when did that happen?
Yeah, well, when it actually happened was I officially became Dr. Stormy in 2018. I finished, I defended, and I got, all of that. And that's when that happened. But in between there, obviously, I worked on that. And I had done my master's degree. And it's the day that I finished my master's degree, I started my doctoral program because I wanted to find a way to take spirituality into work without calling it spirituality in work. Because I've always believed that if a business is sick or it's failing, it's not because the business is sick, it's failing, it's because its people are sick. There's something wrong with the spiritual condition of the people in that organization. So let's take care of the people. Let's see what we can do with that. And so I found a way to do that, and I bridged the gap using Goldman's work in emotional intelligence. And I was able to take that, and then I brought my research into a radio station and how they could apply that, how they could use emotional intelligence in that space to change the culture and the spiritual health of that particular building. And the people that I worked with in radio loved me enough from Denver to Colorado to Texas to let me come into their spaces and try my research.
Oh, that's really great. And I can totally see how you've carried that over in even how you teach business to astrologers, because you're dealing with people who are so not business. It's like the opposite, right? It's like the other side of like it's the opposite of the corporate world. Like they have no idea, and you making and but it also is, so to your point earlier when you were talking about like healing your relationship with money, it also is kind of dysfunction, if I can, to have like no at all, no business acumen whatsoever, to think that you can only be spiritual. So where you do
Yeah,
the
yeah,
bridge the gap, you've bridged both gaps, like both ways.
yeah.
Spirit in the corporate and corporate in the spirit. Like, okay, you guys can do a little bit of both, you know? You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that it's it's that has come together, and I'm grateful that that's a natural expression of what I've been able to create because I do have that Capricorn South Node. So I'm like, listen, I've already been the boss and made all the money, and I know how to do that and be bossy, right? But my North Node is in Cancer in the 11th house, and I was like, so I have to care for people. And forever I said, okay, I'm going to be the best kindergarten teacher ever in whatever I do. So I knew I would be spending probably a lot of time in the basics of whatever it was in some group format, right? And then as time went around, I realized that I was going to bring business to the creative folks, and it needs to be very basic. And that has worked out brilliantly. But the other part is timing. Like the world has also made space now for astrologers as an actual in public job to be noticed and to be welcome for the most part, to be a IRX taxed cat code, right? So it's like, so not only is it like time, and there's a lot of healing, I think, for other generations of astrologers who had to go to dinner parties and they were like the party trick because they weren't the astrologer, and like what their soul was here to do. Like I get tears thinking about this, and they had to say that they did something else, you know, and they were treated like that, and it was not welcome. And certainly it was not welcome to go open a bank account as an astrologer. So there's a lot of just being able to come out healing alone in the world that's made ready, but also, okay, now you can come out, the government wants their little piece. So we also need to talk about business. How are you running this? Because the other side is nobody's doing 20 readings a week anymore and staying sane. And that's the way these practices were built for a very long time. There was not going to be any retirement off of it. There was not going to be any passive income. So it is, I hope that this is a legacy I can leave in the world, in the Astro community, is that it's like at the time where the world opened up for so much healing, someone and many people have been there to catch and show us how to bring those two generations and two worlds together. If I can leave that, I'll feel really good about what I've done here.
You are doing that, like so much so. I mean, in so many different ways. I just took a YouTube class from you that was so great. And it's so nice to have somebody, I'm going to say so a lot because I really feel that much about it. Okay. It's a lot of so's. It's
Okay.
so nice to have somebody who understands what you do. So you're an astrologer. So it's not like we're talking to somebody who is just a techie and who speaks kind of like doesn't like we have to do the work of bridging our language with the language. Like you speak our language. So when you're teaching astrologers or spiritual people or weirdos, of all kinds about YouTube, you know who you're speaking to when you speak our language, and it feels much more accessible when it's taught by you than when it's taught by somebody who's just that, whatever tech, YouTube, marketing, social media, whatever it is, professional, without having that angle of really understanding what we go through, really,
Yeah.
because it's a very different experience for astrologers who, have a different perspective on a lot of things. So you're able to include, um, I don't know, like we were talking about even like, do we elect and little things where you understand and you're not going to get annoyed if somebody
Yeah.
tells you like my best date to launch is other, you're going to be sure that if that works, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that's the thing of like, I think, the business side, the thing I like about business is just business. It's a straight structure. Pick a model, get in it, it will work. Right. Like that's it. And it's the place where bringing it over to creative entrepreneurs, because I work with all kinds of creative entrepreneurs. I mean, we got sound bowl, breath people, accountants who are just really creative in their sphere, astrologers, like whatever it is, we get to just bring it over and teach the container, but in the container teach what is special about how we hold space in that particular container to offer the value. It's a business principle, like how do I add to the solution? And before typically people want to come down that road, it's this idea that I do astrology for everybody, I'm here to just serve everybody. And it's like when you get exhausted from that, because that's what's at the end of that road, and you're ready to build a business and put your special sauce and have your life and your energy back, that's where you come find, right? And understanding that and understanding and supporting the road astrologically and creatively for people, that it's like, burn it out, burn yourself down, because from that place you can build something incredible. Because we all get to the exhaustion point. People are not going to hang out with me. They're not going to take a business class in any sense and really take it seriously, typically until they're exhausted. That's okay. We're humans. It is a really challenging piece about being human. I'm like, "Oof."
I think that's really deep what you're saying, because I mean, yeah, I've experienced astrologer burnout many times in the 10 last years that I'm practicing, like many times. There
Yeah,
is such a thing. We don't have vacations. Our email is our email on the weekend at night. It
yeah,
can be a lot. And then there's like all the social, the writing, the teaching, that everything it gets like, and you end up when you're an entrepreneur having to do 10 jobs.
yeah,
Right. And so, and you're not going to be good at all of these 10 jobs because most likely you're a really good astrologer,
that's
but
right.
you know, and so depending on your education, of course, like some people have education in different things, marketing and stuff, and you're going to see like where we all fill the holes kind of professionally. But I mean, we were trained to read charts, and then we have to run a business. And that step is, yeah, it's scary and it's risky if and exhausting. And
Yeah,
so having somebody, a mentor that has been there, that has done the moves, that has like the vantage point also. And, like I say mentor also because I feel like at some point I was told like the difference between a mentor and a teacher is that the mentor is like an initiator and brings you up with them and is like, look, this is how it's done. It's a little bit like, you know, behind the scenes. It's, I love this, the thing of like, I'm going to show you how. Like, this is not competition. This is not like Stormie Grace. Like, no,
Yeah, it's definitely not that.
it's
It is
not that. It's
not that.
really, it feels like you're welcoming people in and that you're really like sharing the tricks. Um and it's really generous, and I agree with you. I might not, yeah, I don't know. I have a Capricorn rising, so it's hard for me to tell.
Yeah,
I
which part is I just need to work harder and which part is I can get there faster.
Yeah, if I just do it all by myself.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know what
I
I
can.
mean?
I
Yeah.
do. I just like 1,000% understand, you know? Ah, but
It,
eventually the day and the time and the moment comes, and when that happens, I want there to be solution available, and for that I'm responsible.
yeah, I love that. And so, and I mean, there's so many ways that you contribute to the community with your work, you know? So I'm sure like your one-on-one work is also like definitely like a thing, you know, because everybody, this is how I think of it. It's like plant a little seed of something that's going to grow somewhere else. But just as a teacher, and there's also everybody on YouTube, but just as a teacher of astrologers in the astrology community, like it really feels like you're contributing a really big piece of the puzzle for a lot of us. And so, yeah, I can hear that really deep desire for you to like um leave something meaningful, and that your work is not like in vain and that it really does impact people. And I'm here to reassure you that it really, really does. Really.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That is like, that is really, like you're saying, it's what and how today my life has aligned and presented itself to show up, because in the beginning it was like, just get on YouTube and your job right now is to talk about these fun things and get started and get out there. And then things changed and it was more really presenting the evolutionary perspective, and then and I think that the evolution for all of us will continue to come, because that's my experience, and that's my experience being out with other astrologers as well, is watching our evolutions and watching us be afraid. When you've been the Saturn person forever and now Venus is pinging in your life and it's time to go down the Venus road, it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Right? So watching us go through growing up in public together is something precious. It's precious. And I realized that in any industry I was going to be in, I would have the privilege to do it. I just happen to be an astrologer. So I'm going to do it here with you guys and try and bridge these generational gaps, because that's a whole thing out there right now. This is my latest campaign, is bridging the generational gaps. All of my talks for 2025 are like, bridge the gap. We're going to be nice to each other because we're all astrologers.
Mm, it's yeah, I have so many thoughts about that. I feel like Gen X is like really the generation that's in the middle, and we're too complacent to fill the gap. We're like, you guys, just whatever. You know, it's like that generation between the boomers and the millennials and the Z's, like that are so young and fresh, and the boomers that are so boomer. And so we stuck in the middle are kind of like, what are we, what? You know, so yeah.
I
Sorry.
like it, well, because a lot of us are like in the Pluto Libra camp. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a Zennial, I'm right there. And it's like, okay, I feel like 2020 really called Pluto Libra, tip of Pluto Scorpio to the table and was like, okay, you're on. Go. It's your time to
Bridge the
shine.
gap. Yeah.
Absolutely. And now it's like a pleasure to be able to do that, because I really see the value. I'm like, okay, so for our older generation, first of all, they do have that healing of having to have hid for a very long time, right? They were not allowed to be them in public, right? So they have that hidden piece and that wound that needs to come up. But what they are is knowledgeable, not just because they know astrology, but they've had time to practice it and to live
Practice.
it and to apply it.
Thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of clients,
Yeah,
of charts, of experiences of you can't sell that. This is only happened
absolutely.
with 20, 30 years of practice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Roy Gillett, he is one of my favorite people, because he gave me one of the best things that made me look at astrology as a profession differently. He said, the thing about being married is surviving your transits together. Because it's cool that we're astrologers, but that's our job. We bring our families in and through this. And what was that like for people? And what does that look like, right? When you're going to the conference, how does that impact your home life? They have the experience to talk about that over time. When old girl gets into perimenopause, how do you survive that section and transits together? They have that to talk about, but they're not really always talking about it on the internet, right? And this is where the other generation who spent a lot of time on the internet, much more in isolation with themselves or with social relationships that are just internet based, they've really got this part down, but they don't have all of that age, time, and knowledge. So I'm like, come on, we're all the weirdos, we're all astrologers. Work together. You have something to offer to each other because y'all over here, we need that. Y'all over here, we need your skills to help get that out there. And then you can teach each other. And it was like just the best thing ever. I'm sitting with Roy the first time I met him. And I think Roy is in his late 70s, maybe right there, maybe early 80s. Sorry, Roy. But we're sitting having this conversation. And he's telling me about the depth of the Jupiter-Neptune transit. And I'm like, Roy, do you want to come on my YouTube channel? And I mean, it was absolutely what I'm telling you right now. Because he's ready to pour out this depth of an experience. And I'm like, get this man a microphone. And that's where we can come together.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that we see some of that, like, because there was a gap in the work, in the communities. But when you get all of us together, actually, when we're at NORWAC, at ESAR, there you will see a 23-year-old sitting down with a 70-year-old and they're friends and they share the same passion and the thing. And there is like that intergenerational appreciation. If any culture is appreciative of generations for what they are, it would be ours, right? Because like we could be like, oh, those Plutos and whatever, Sam,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it works if we remember that when we come into these astrological spaces, that we have a choice to make in that astrological space. And it is which thing about me goes first, right? If it's all of this other personality that I need you to acknowledge about me first before you acknowledge that I'm an astrologer, we're going to have collision. Or if I come to the table and I say first and primary, we're both astrologers, and then we let our additions add to the depth of what we work with and build together, that's when I think things can be good. And we see it at these social events as well. When it is personality first, there's going to be collision and problem, right? But it's like we come to an astrology conference because we're astrologers first. And if that's the primary focus, everything else can build around that. And then we can let all the other good stuff in. So
Yeah.
try to work with that.
You know, when we left the ESAR hotel, that 2022 ESAR,
Mhm.
in Denver, the last day we were at breakfast and we were sitting there with Blake, and there's the server said that, you know, there's many conferences that come a lot. We have surgeons, we have doctors, we have all types of people come to do conferences. He said we never get tipped as well or in better conversation than when the astrologers come. And he's like, I don't know what you guys are on, but I've never seen a group of 1,000 people that everybody is nice and lovely when you come to their table and they tip well and they have good conversation. He said, I had no interest in astrology before,
Yeah.
but now that I met y'all, I want to study what you guys have been studying. And that for me, it was like testimonial galore. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
what this person said is basically a big thing about, yeah, what it can offer, but
Yeah.
how it can work. So I love that you have like hope, because I think that if any community would be capable of social, structural reflection of communal help, it would
Mhm.
be us. You
Yeah,
know,
I
more
do. Well,
orthopedic surgeons of America.
and I just think at the end of the day, If you are really an astrologer, who the hell else are you going to hang out with except for us? You going to go back in the basement and do it by yourself? Zero fun, right? Maybe you're in a period of life and reflection. You got to go through the dark shadow of the soul, like all of that. Okay, that's fine.
Like
But in
true
the
rest
end,
phase.
right? Like I'm like, if you're one of this kinds of beautiful weirdo, we're it.
Yeah.
So the rest is the business of human relationships. So come on out here, be with your peoples. And it is interesting too. I think that, you know, what I've been able to experience in the time I've been in our industry is that when there is conflict, we rally not for peace, but we rally to remember we're all astrologers, right? Like if you know, if you're anywhere near the astrology community, you know the whole housing system situation that went down live on YouTube. Okay. It was like 10 hours. And then the socials had to be hijacked as well. And really what it was two fantastic astrologers
Astrologers who
with
disagreed.
disagreed. And we got to see different perspectives. And what happened was everybody was at the next event, right? Because we're the weird, this is it. We're who you
Yeah.
got.
And these two astrologers have like contributed so much, you know, and so much knowledge and are both like super respected, knowledgeable people. And so, I mean, it didn't seem like, for me, it didn't seem like there was like real like animosity, but just like really kind of like keeping your peace. Like it felt kind of like very fixed about the being able to say, no, this is both right and right.
I feel
Uh,
like it was like astro drama as far as we go. You know
yeah,
what I mean? I was like, listen, if this is the kind of community I'm in, if this is the kind of drama they have, like sign me up because it was actually quite educational.
yeah.
Cool. All right.
Then that ought to teach us a little bit about, you know, the history of astrology, because that was really the debate was on the source thereof, right? Was like,
Yeah.
when did this really start? That was, yeah, it was cool to watch from the outside. And yeah, if this is drama, then that's okay. You know, another thing that happened at that year is that, okay, so we were at the party and we started to like drink a little bit. And then I realized, oh my God, I forgot my cell phone on a table at the party. So, you know, oh, so I go, I run. And then while I'm running, I'm like, these are astrologers. Is somebody going to steal my phone? They all know about Saturn and karma and stuff. Like nobody is stealing my phone. And so of course I came and my phone was right there where it had been. Nobody had looked. And I was like, you know, there's like something about like knowing what people are into that kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if somebody did steal your phone or it got lost, we just call in a horary astrologer to be like, where is it? And I've seen that
Yeah.
happen live. Somebody lost their tablet and we were
The
like, where's
pen
Wade?
that it was, I think it was Sam's
Reynolds.
pen of his iPad got, yeah, got,
And you have a whole room full of people who know the skill laying it out. And sure enough, it came back. The waitress brought it from the thing under the thing, and there it was, and the pin was found. So I'm like, listen, if you're out here doing some shady stuff, somebody's gonna cast a chart and you're gonna get busted. So just skip it.
yeah, we're all like, or Saturn. We're like, "Ugh, no thanks, I'm not I'm not even testing you."
Yeah, yeah. It's a good place to be in. It's a good place to build a life. I encourage it to others if this is, you know, what's built into your chart. Astrology has taken me all around the world. It continues to expand where I get to see in the world. It's taken me into the living rooms and hearts of other professionals that I would have not met, you know. It has really changed my relationship with my husband and my children. And that's where astrology really matters. Because I think you can have the best astrology in the world, like knowledge, but if you're not bringing that stuff home, are you really doing it? You know? And so that's where these things get impactful for me. It's like, what does it look like when I'm sitting with my husband?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. The you know, the method that I teach at Deborah Silverman's school and the method that she developed is called applied astrology. And it's
Yeah.
all about, okay, so that's nice. You saw it on the chart. where do we put it in your life? How does that feel in real life, in your body, in your life, at your job, with your husband, with your kids, etc. That take your astrology out of the chart, you know, and
Yeah.
into life, which is like a really important thing. And I think that like what you offer for everybody, and I think that the viewers are going to be so happy with this, is like this hope that it's possible and that there are tools out there, and that if you learn the tools, then you can too do that, that it's not completely inaccessible, that it's not like a fever dream, or that you're like, oh my God, am I tripping? No, I would never, how did Stormie do that? You're like, oh, I'm going to tell you exactly how I did that, which is cool because it like, that it's really cool to do that, Stormie. Like people would be like, oh my God, Stormie Grace. And you could be like, shh, I never reveal, you know? I'd be like, yes, mwahaha. But you're not. You're like, oh, let me show you. It's very easy. I made some slides about it. Here are the slides. Here's the thing. And you listen and you're like, oh, I can do it. And you literally give all the tools.
Yeah. I want people to have it. I want them to see it. And I think that so much of my world right now is driven by realizing the change in the world and all of those kinds of things, but wanting people to have the freedom that they want in their lives. I'm really big on that. So teaching people, I realize that there are a lot of people who did not have certain kinds of financial conversations at home, or conversations around finances that had to do with the fact that wealth is accessible to us. And how do you go about having that? Wealth or money have been turned into dirty words and put into categories that are not necessarily true, right? So that, and also the other thing I'm huge about is allowing feminine energy to be free and to work in the value space around finances, around our own personal values, around hormones, around these kinds of things, because all of those things are applicable, especially as we age, those stories meld together. So I'm like, if I can show you and have some conversations with you that maybe your family couldn't do it because maybe your family didn't break every generational curse, but they broke some of them. So now if someone else needs to come along and have a conversation about this area that you're stuck in, I'm happy to have this one. Listen, I'm not telling anybody about how to get their gym life together. You can talk to my husband because listen, I don't care about that. I only work out to be cute. So I don't have any deep spiritual knowledge for you there, but I can tell you about your value. I can tell you about being a woman, being in feminine energy, how it works, how it moves, and how it impacts your money. And I can have those conversations. And I want you to have them. I want everybody to have them. That's why when you take my classes to my business class, I just show you my numbers. I'm like, here are the numbers. Here are the numbers of this month so that you can see what is possible for you. Here's what it looks like.
Wow, it's extremely generous. Plus the hours and the hours and the hours of YouTube instruction that you give for free. Like there's something about your spirit that feels for me like very, very giving. Um, and yeah, it's nice to know that somebody who cares to give a lot is getting theirs too, and that this feels like you're presenting actually a really healthy Taurus archetype. I want to say, because you're presenting like a Taurus who is about like, yeah, I'm going to get my money. I'm going to live in a beautiful space. I'm going to like really take care of my senses, and I'm going to build this and let it grow. And I'm going to give too. So it feels like it's not the hoarder type of low roads Taurus.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
need, I need, I need. You feel
yeah,
like, when they say like a vessel needs kind of a hole so that it
yeah,
pours, like putting a hole in your vessel, like letting some drip out while you receive. And it feels like a really like healthy way to present Taurus energy, that you're giving as much as you have to give, and your eye is on the bread too, It's like, no, she's not sacrificial, not, over giving either, but you give a really big amount of information and resources. And so for everyone who's hearing this, tell them a little bit like how they can work with you, where they can find you. Stormie Grace is on YouTube. StormieGrace.com is your website.
It is, yes. You can come to either one of those spaces, and all of my businesses actually interact and feed into each other. So, depending on which lens you're really willing and ready to grow through, you can do that. But stormiegrace.com is definitely my website. You can come there and get all of the Astro goodies, and I focus a lot in that. And then, if you're ready to grow your business, or you're ready to, I don't focus on growing your YouTube channel. I focus on teaching you how to build a YouTube channel that can be a resource and a financial benefit in your life. And if that's something that you want, you don't have to be an astrologer to come through my business school, which is Legatia Academy. And Legatia is Latin for legacy, because I think we all have a legacy to leave. So if you are a whatever and you would like to learn to build your business and be profitable, because I focus my programs on profitability, I want you to have financial freedom, then you can come to Legatia Academy and we can getting on. I actually have a YouTube class coming up. I teach my YouTube class live about 3 times a year now, and
I
it's fun.
highly recommend it
Fun.
for anyone who is YouTube curious. It's fun. First of all, it's a fun group. We get to ask you questions once a week. So there's like a live session with you. It's super affordable. It's a bunch of information. The program is like really clear. I really loved it. I took it with my friend Tiffany, and we were study buddies together, and just like cheering about how much we loved it and telling all of our friends how that was great. So highly, highly recommend people take that course live, because yeah, it's fun to be like in the group, hear the other people's questions, have access to you is like really priceless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice. We're in a nice small group, so it's a limited class, and it's cool because you leave with a task. So you get to win in that class. That's what I love about it. You get to win because every week you come with an assignment that was achievable for the week. So you get a really nice, delicious like win in there. And I'm going to show you how to build a YouTube channel that is profitable. Like there's profitability options for you. There are 13 streams of income that come off of my YouTube channel. I want you to have that. So come learn to do it.
So smart. It's so, so, so smart and really great. And so that's also accessible through stormiegrace.com. And so if anybody wants to contact you, they can hit you up there, watch your YouTubes, or ask me. I'll put all the links in the caption of this video. Stormie, thank you so, 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 so much. You're really a gem, and I'm so grateful for your presence here, and yeah, and all of your knowledge and your sharing. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much again for having me. And I wish you just as much success with what you're doing and letting us get to know the community through what you're doing, because we get to peek behind the veil and see our fellows. And I think that's a really precious thing. So keep doing what you're doing because it's valuable.
Thank you so much. I will, promise. Pinky promise. Thank you. Yeah, bye.